Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, the northeast Nigeria-based Islamist group Boko Haram has said it carried out the abduction of hundreds of schoolboys in the northwestern state of Katsina. The claim came in an audio message by the group's leader, Abubakar Shekau. He said Boko Haram had attacked the boarding school because Western-style education was against Islamic principles. So how much does this claim of responsibility mark a major turning point in the advance of jihadist groups into northwest Nigeria? We'll speak to an international security analyst, as well as the head of the vigilante group that's been fighting Boko Haram in the northeast for many years. And later, America passes another political milestone after Joe Biden wins the state-by-state electoral college vote that formally determines the U.S. presidency. It effectively ends Donald Trump's floundering campaign to overturn his loss in the November election. But is the outgoing president now going to go quietly into the night, or will he not relent in the damaging course he's decided to take? We'll speak with a Republican strategist coming up. Now, if you've been visiting the social media site Twitter this week, you'll see that Nigeria's President Muhammad Buhari has come under sustained criticism after a large number of students, possibly hundreds of them, were abducted from the government boys' science secondary school in Kankara in Katsina State, which is President Buhari's home state, and the mass abduction took place whilst Mr. Buhari was in the state. The president is yet to visit the scene of the crime or the families of the abducted students. Earlier, it emerged that the Islamist group Boko Haram has claimed responsibility for the attack. Correspondents say this has raised the stakes to a much higher level, and that if something is not done within the next few hours or days, the window for a possible rescue could close, and Nigeria might have another Chibok on its hands when more than 200 girls were abducted from their school in the northeast in 2014 by Boko Haram, and more than 100 of them are still missing. A new hashtag, Bring Back Our Boys, is now trending on Twitter.
Parents in Katsina State.
We are having positive responses. There was a contact from the kidnappers to the parents of one of the pupils, and we have also made some contact with some of them, and we have a fair idea of the locations where the children are, and I think the military and other security agencies are right now in the forest to make sure that they are rescued unharmed. So I think there's positive development so far. Well, like I said, I briefed him, and we learned from his long years of experience as a military officer, the president, and also we have learned from his suggestions as what to do and how to go about.
And that's Aminu Mazari, who's the governor of Katsina State, where the attack took place. Well, for analysis of the claim by Boko Haram that they carried out the abductions in Katsina State, I'm joined now in the studio by Dr. Mohammed Jahun, who's Commandant General of the vigilante group of Nigeria, which has been fighting Boko Haram in the northeast for many years. And I'm also joined via Cisco WebEx by the international security and defense analyst, David Otto. And I'll come first to you, David, to set the stage for us, because Boko Haram has claimed responsibility, and I wonder if you think that that is a credible claim. Does the attack bear their hallmarks? Because we've heard some of the escaped boys saying their kidnappers were shouting Allahu Akbar, God is great, which is not the typical behavior of non-jihadi bandits who don't claim to be fighting for God, do they?
Charles, this is, we're now from bring back our girls to a situation where we're facing a bring back our boys. As you rightly said, it is not very clear whether Boko Haram, the Shekau faction, which is the first main faction before they split with the Islamic State of West Africa province, the Shekau faction is saying that it is behind the kidnapping. Of course, their excuse is that they didn't announce that they were involved because they wanted to settle the boys. But all along, we've been talking about bandits. Whether what that means, it's another question. But the claim by the Shekau faction changes the dynamics totally from one where the Nigerian authorities and the security services were contemplating, a rescue mission, to one where, for the safety and security of the boys, it is now looking more like a negotiation rather than a rescue situation. So it's a challenging one, Charles, because the mere logistics of kidnapping what Boko Haram claims to be 523 children is unbelievable, and it just tells one the level of impunity that these bandits have been able to to exert in this area of northern Nigeria, especially in a state which is the president's home state, coinciding with the time when he just visited Katsina. The stakes are very high here, Charles.
Stay with us, David. I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but let me bring in Dr. Mohammed Jahun, who's the Commandant General of the Vigilante Group of Nigeria. And your people have been in the northeast, haven't they? Fighting Boko Haram for many years. In terms of capacity, I understand that Abubakar's Shekau's faction is the only one of the contenders with the capacity to orchestrate this kind of attack in that part of the country, apart from the fact that this attack is similar, as David was pointing out, to the Chibok attack and the Dapchi one by Boko Haram. What's your take on that?
Well, you see, in every situation like this, we normally have issues, different groups of agitators claiming to be the ones that were able kidnap or abduct a certain group of persons. In this case, we know that the Shekau faction now decided to say they are the ones that abducted these young boys. And by virtue of it, in war like this, sometimes it's psychological. We have what we call the psychological warfare. So it may be a psychological thing. They are trying to divert the thinking of the military from its real, what is really on the ground. So if the military are not steadfast, I think they will be, their attention will be diverted, and knowing fully well that where is the problem? Is it that it's Shekau faction that were abducted these children, or is it that they want to play us intelligently? So there are a lot of things that are attached to this, and we, the government, must be very careful in trying to tackle these issues. There must be an intelligence issues here. War like this, like what happened in Chibok and Dapchi, it's a similar situation, but the situation is different. That of the Chibok and Dapchi, they came in with vehicles, lorries that picked these girls. But in this case, they come with motorcycles and they took them away. So the door is almost the same characteristics, almost the same way of doing things, and they have their way. Pick these children, about 500 of them. Now we understand it's 333 that are remaining with them in the forest.
Well, it's interesting because it sounds as though you don't believe that it's Boko Haram that did it, or there is a question mark for you over that.
Absolutely, there's a question mark. It's whether it's Boko Haram that did it or not. But there may be, because you cannot even ascertain the audio of the audio that said Shekau said it's them. It is their own people that abduct these school children. So care must be taken in trying to find out exactly who did this, and where. But that is not the situation now. The issue now is how will these boys be rescued? That is the question.
Well, that's an important point, because what I was going to ask you is, what do you think, given your knowledge of that area, I mean the Northeast in particular, but the North in general, and the fact that your people, your vigilantes, have been fighting alongside the army for many years there. What do you think could happen next? Because the government is saying troops have surrounded the area where these pupils are supposedly being held, but several days have now gone by. I mean, they were taken on Friday, and we heard one of the escaped boys saying they walked for 24 hours non-stop, which suggests that they have been probably taken out of the Northwest region. They've also apparently been split into smaller groups, which is what happened with the Chibok girls, and that's going to make it more difficult, isn't it?
Well, from the clips we saw now, the governor said they have identified where these boys are through the aerial survey with the Nigerian Air Force. But the issue now is, unless a drastic method, unless we adopt a very serious technology, the fate of these boys is at stake. Because as at now, as I'm talking to you, if every day we have now, today is making the third day or thereabout, and if care is not taken, this boy will be splitted.
Well, they've already been split. That's what the boys are saying. If they split
into different groups, that is a very dangerous one.
Right, okay.
Very,
Stay
very
with
dangerous.
us. We'll come back to you and also to David in a moment. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the mass abduction of hundreds of schoolboys from Katsina State by Boko Haram, apparently. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, as you may have heard, the jihadist group Boko Haram has claimed responsibility for the abduction of hundreds of schoolboys in the northwest Nigerian state of Katsina. The attack was initially blamed on armed groups locally referred to as bandits who are active in the northwest region, where kidnappings for ransom are common. But it's now emerged that more than 100 gunmen on motorcycles, apparently affiliated with Boko Haram, stormed the rural school north of Kankara town. A number of boys were able to escape, but many were captured, split into groups and taken away, according to residents of Kankara. The kidnappings occurred in the home state of President Buhari, who condemned the attack and ordered security stepped up in schools, with those in Katsina state closed. Correspondents say Boko Haram's claim of responsibility marks a major turning point in the march of jihadist groups from the northeast to the northwest of Nigeria.
Government helps volunteers, but there are lots of bad eggs in government that makes things difficult. However, the House of Representatives member representing Dutsinma is in the forefront of assisting we volunteers. We are volunteers working for God's sake, not expecting any reward. We believe we can do better than the security agents if given freedom and weapons like that given to the security operatives. We will protect our communities effectively.
And that's a vigilante there raising the prospect of community policing. And by coincidence, with me in the studio, Dr. Mohammed Jahun, Commandant General of the Vigilante Group of Nigeria, which has been fighting Boko Haram in the northeast for many years. And I'm also joined via Cisco WebEx by the International Security and Defense Analyst, David Otto. And I'll come to you in a moment, Dr. Mohammed Jahun, because I'm wondering if that's one of your lot who was talking there. But let's go to David Otto. David, I wonder if, given your international intelligence contacts, whether you might be able to explain to us why Boko Haram appears to be expanding in Nigeria. Do they have more support? Is that what appears to be happening, or are they just exploiting gaps in Nigeria's security architecture?
I think, Charles, they're a bit of both. One of the operational or the structural nature of Boko Haram has been that there are several, what you call unit commanders that have split from the Boko Haram Shekau faction, but also some of them have been dismissed, to use that word, from the Islamic State of West Africa province. And most of these factions or these leaders have moved to form criminal groups along the western part of Nigeria, taking advantage of other existing units within that area. They still retain the same tactics which they used to use when they were part of Boko Haram, and they do retain the connections. So when you see, for example, Boko Haram coming out and saying that they are responsible for this kidnap, what may have happened is that one of these units that is involved, that has links with Boko Haram, saw this as an opportunity to renegotiate their relationship with Abubakar Shekau, who is disabled at the moment. And, this is an opportunity for him to reinforce his faction's, presence. Because as what we've seen in recent times is the overwhelming presence and operational capacity being, demonstrated by the ISWAP faction. So Shekau has just taken an opportunity that has been presented to him by these so-called bandits who still have relationships with Boko Haram. This is not the kind of, what I'll call an MO, a modus operandi of the Shekau's faction. He doesn't have that capacity any longer. So what he has done is, taking advantage. And perhaps what I think happened, Charles, is that while the bandits were negotiating with the government to release the boys, perhaps for ransom, they were also negotiating with the Boko Haram faction to hand over the responsibility to the boys. What we should avoid now is these boys being moved towards Zamfara in the west of Katsina and towards Niger Republic. If that happens, they will now be in the real hands of Boko Haram, and that is the danger which we must avoid, the security services.
Very good points there, David. Let me bring in Dr. Mohammed Jahun. The man we heard talking earlier is obviously a vigilante. Those are the kinds of people that fall under your umbrella, are they?
Yeah, some of them are part of them, and some of them are independent based on circumstances on the ground. Though we have our men in the whole of Katsina State, we have our men in Kankara as well. We have them everywhere, but what I always want to say is that...
The problem you face, I don't mean to interrupt you, is that even if you've got men in Kankara, the firepower that these people come with overwhelms them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it overwhelms them, but there is local intelligence that can be provided by our men within that area. Local intelligence is very, very important and is very, very vital. But by the time you felt that even the local intelligence is not important to you, sometimes that's where we always have issues and we have problems.
And that's the reaction you're getting from the government.
That is the reaction we're getting from the government. Though I've had one-on-one with the Katsina State Governor, and he's very ready and willing to support our men in Katsina State so that we can be able to...
Right, so let's now tap into that intelligence that you talk about, that your people might have in that area, in terms of the security implications of this claim of responsibility by Boko Haram. How do you think they might have carried out this attack? Might they have, as David was suggesting, operatives in the northwest masquerading as bandits that the authorities were unaware of, that you might be aware of, or might they have come across from the northeast in such large numbers and moved unchecked all the way to Kankara in the northwest, 700 kilometers away?
Yes, you see, the Boko Haram, they have a lot of strategy, and their strategy are spread. The way you plan your own, in the military or in the security forces, sometimes they plan even ahead of you. I know we have what we call the school security, that is securing of schools, and within that range, there are issues that came up. If that is sustained properly because of what happened with the Chibok girls, it wouldn't have reached this stage. And you can see the aptitude. The school has almost 800 and something students, and we have only 2 armed policemen there. You understand? So if the local communities are fully involved in the provision of local intelligence, I think the government should have known by now that something is about to happen. And intelligence, you cannot get intelligence without support.
So the heart of your argument is community policing.
Community policing. Community policing, though, has different models.
Right.
The models that is being adopted now is quite different from the models I'm talking about. We're talking of community-led intelligence,
right,
which is a very important model, and people need to be trained. People need to be their capacity must be built to be able to give such kind of intelligence. And those intelligence should not be seen as nothing. No matter how little the intelligence is, it should be taken very seriously
and assessed.
Otherwise, it may cause us a lot.
Okay, stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the march of jihadist groups from the northeast across the arid plains and into the northwest of Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, Tuesday's claim of responsibility for the abduction of hundreds of schoolboys from Katsina State by Boko Haram marks a major turning point in the advance of jihadist groups into northwest Nigeria. Boko Haram and its splinter group, the Islamic State in West Africa Province, or ISWAP, are waging an insurgency in Nigeria's northeast, and up till now we're thought to have only a minor presence in the northwest. But concerns have grown of jihadist inroads into the region, especially after fighters claiming to be in the northwest released a 2020 propaganda video pledging allegiance to Boko Haram's leader. President Buhari has made the fight against the group a priority, but the security situation in northern Nigeria has deteriorated since 2015 when he came to power. Hashtag Bring Back Our Boys has been trending on social media since the weekend, a reference to a similar hashtag used after the abduction of the Chibok girls in the northeast by Boko Haram in 2014. And with me in the studio, Dr. Mohammed Jahun, Commandant General of the Vigilante Group of Nigeria, which has been fighting Boko Haram in the northeast for many years. And I'm also joined via Cisco WebEx by the International Security and Defense Analyst, David Otto. And David, the President, Mr. Buhari, says he's approved a joint military police operation specifically aimed at ridding the states of Niger, Zamfara, Katsina, Kaduna and Sokoto of this problem of banditry. But if there is now the added element of ideological militancy and insurgency, that requires a different approach, doesn't it? Do you agree with Dr. Jahun here with me in the studio that a form of community policing and heightened intelligence gathering are key?
I totally agree. If you're fighting criminality or you're fighting an insurgency, it has to be intelligence-led, and you only get information, which of course you then analyze into intelligence from the local stakeholders, and that comes from the guy selling peanuts at the bottom of the streets. That is very crucial. But one of the key tasks that the government has, in my opinion, is to identify or to tell us how many boys, in fact, have been taken by these so-called crime terror nexus, by bandits affiliated with now the established Abubakar Shekau Boko Haram faction. We cannot repeat a scenario that was seen with the Chibok girls, where the government will be searching for ghost figures. The Shekau faction has come up with a figure which is completely very different from what the state government has come up with. I mean, the logistics of kidnapping 523 boys, it's unbelievable. It's a catastrophic move. And that cannot happen again after what happened in Chibok and Dapchi, as we rightly mentioned. Now, what is the approach? In order for the state authority or the federal authorities to deploy, their forces, they need to know, they need to have an assessment of what they are facing. Who is really in charge? Is it the bandits, or is it, Boko Haram, as they say, or have the bandits all of a sudden transformed into Boko Haram? It therefore means that any rescue mission will put the life of these young boys at risk. So there has to be a reassessment. It doesn't mean that a rescue mission shouldn't be on standby, but there has to be a reassessment of the current threat that these abductors pose, especially on these young boys, because the fear is that as soon as they are separated into various groups, that becomes a Herculean task, for the security services, but also to the government. It's devastating to hear this, but the situation couldn't be any worse, Charles.
Well, you're right about that, certainly, David, and we may be a bit late to the party, if you like, because from what we're hearing, they've already been split up. But let me bring in Dr. Jahun here. You have a lot of contact with the army and so on. Some people have attributed these security lapses to incompetence, others to the uncaring attitude of the ruling class in Nigeria, others that it is a repetitive pattern of bad governance. What do you reckon?
Well, I would not want to say that it's a bad government, or that the military,
well, it's obviously
or the security agencies are incompetent. But I think what is very much important is that the security strategy must change. The whole.
But if the government refuses, I'm sorry to interrupt you, consistently to change that security architecture or arrangement over a sustained period of time, what does that say about the government?
Yes, the security structure is not purely the responsibility of the government. It's the responsibility of the security agencies themselves. When you are doing one thing always and without success.
But it is the government's responsibility to hold them to account.
Yeah, it's to change your structure.
If they're failing in what they're doing.
Yeah, if they're failing in what they're doing, they should also change their structure.
Do you think they're failing in what they're doing?
Well, they have done their best. They have done their best.
So your conclusion is that their best isn't good enough?
Isn't good enough, as far as we're concerned. But they have done their best and they're doing their best, but isn't good enough. And the government at their own level should also stand up to their responsibility. We know they are trying. We know how much they pumped into these security agencies to fight crime and criminality within the country. There should be a kind of understanding between the political class and even the security agencies themselves. They should sit, talk to themselves and find out what is really happening. The political class, that is the political class, should sit down and look at the strategy. Look what people are saying, what experts are talking about. Don't ignore the idea of experts. Don't ignore the idea of international community that are saying, use this strategy, use this strategy. The security architecture of the country, it should be changed towards a more perfect and a more elaborate and a more strategic manner. Not just to say, okay, we have applied this strategy and it has failed. We're also applying the same strategy, operation this, operation that. We know they are trying their best and people are dying. The military are losing their lives, the other security agencies. But let's change strategy. Let's change the leadership style, the leadership system in the security system. When you say the leadership system is that by the time you strategize in this way and you fail, call other people. We have think tanks in the country. We have retired service chiefs. We have retired inspector generals of police. We have retired intelligence agencies.
And you have security consultants.
And we have security consultants, just like this gentleman that is talking. Bring everybody together. Let's strategize. Let's synergize. Let's look at what is the problem of this country. Where did the problem come? Then the security agency now will be able to say, okay, let us give the government, this is what we want. Unless we do this, there won't be peace in this country. So everybody must be brought on deck.
Yeah.
We have, when you look at the social media, and even the electronic media and the mass media, a lot of people, a lot of experts are talking. Bring all these think tanks together. Where are our retired generals that fought war? Where are our intelligence agencies, the directors of intelligence agencies? Where are they? Where are the military officers? Where are they?
Somehow,
let all of them come together.
Somehow, I don't think what you're saying is going to happen. I would love to see it happen, but I think we're likely to hear the same thing that we normally hear, which is that the government has technically defeated Boko Haram, and that these are simply, loose strand elements that are going out there to cause a bit of mayhem. Let me bring you back in, David Otto, because in order to get the kind of rounded approach that Dr. Jahun is talking about, the psychological part of it is very important, and perception of what the government is doing is clearly very important. Do you share the perception that some people have that President Buhari is in Katsina State and has yet to visit the families of those children who were abducted and is therefore insensitive to their plight or indifferent to it?
As the commander-in-chief and with a situation like this happening in your state, remember before the president went to Katsina, he was expected to attend a National Assembly, what some people termed a summon, to talk about the insecurity in the country. And of course, the president thought it wise to travel to Katsina, which is his home state. And this therefore coincided with the kidnap of these boys. Whether it has anything to do with that or not, it's a matter of my view and your views. Now, I think the key here, Charles, is that it seems to me, from my experience, that there is an overwhelming political interference in the affairs of security. And I often say that don't blame the baker when the butchers bake the bread. And that seems to be what is happening in the case of Nigeria. The politicians who have very limited and challenged, strategic understanding of security are in charge. And the people who are supposed to be in charge of operations, the people that have the tactical capacity, they have to rely on the politicians who, are limited in their views. So, there is an issue that has to be dealt with. And we've seen that even from, the scenarios of NSAS. The Nigerian security architecture has to be revamped, from all angles. And the security personnel, the army, the police, the civil defense forces, the local vigilante groups, they have to be given the opportunity to do their job without being interfered with by the political elites. That is where the problem is. The politics of insecurity is the biggest challenge that we're facing in Nigeria. And that has to stop because, there is no other country that 523, boys, I don't believe in the numbers, but it's just unbelievable. What kind of capacity, do you have for an organization like Boko Haram or even bandits to escape with those numbers of abducted children? It is unbelievable. And if the president doesn't, get onto this, then I don't see what, the most powerful nation in Africa, how it's going to turn out. But, this must be resorted. We cannot have this number of children being adopted, by, a group of, bandits or Boko Haram members. It is unacceptable. And something has to change, Charles.
We've got about 30 seconds, Dr. Jahun. Can it now be said that far from Boko Haram being defeated or at least contained within a small area in the northeast, which is what the government is always saying, the group is clearly now expanding its reach into the northwest and is therefore a bigger threat to security in Nigeria than it was a few years ago?
Very well. The situation is getting worse. I would not want to say it's getting out of hand. But allowing them and not even doing the right thing to allow them to even get to this stage now, meaning we're returning back to where we were before now. So if we are returning back to where we are, that means it's very dangerous. What happened? Yes. And there is need for political will.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Mohammed Jahun, Commandant General of the Vigilante Group of Nigeria, and of course, the International Security and Defense Analyst, David Otto, thank you very much indeed. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, including America passes another political milestone after Joe Biden wins the Electoral College vote that formally determines the US presidency. But is Donald Trump now going to go quietly into the night? Stay with us.